So we're starting here in line 491, and the subject is Pyrrhus here, and the main verb is instat, which means kind of presses on, forges ahead. And then you've got this ablative phrase, we patria. Now, we is the ablative of vis, meaning strength or power. So with strength. And then patria here, this is not the noun patria, meaning fatherland. This is the adjective patrius, meaning paternal or of a father. So we patria means with paternal strength or with his father's strength. So the point is that Pyrrhus is strong just like his father Achilles. So Pyrrhus presses on with his father's strength. Then going on after the semicolon, nec claustra, neither bolts, i.e. the locks on the doors, nec ipsi custodes, nor the guards themselves, or you could say nor the very guards, valent, are able, that's just like possunt, are able to suffere, to withstand him. So he's this kind of tremendous, powerful force. You know, doors can't hold him back, guards can't hold him back. He just kind of charges ahead. And then we've got another semicolon, and then after that, the subject is janua, which is the door. And the verb that goes with that is labat. So the door totters. From, and now we have an ablative phrase, meaning from, literally from the frequent, krebro, battering ram, aries. In other words, the door totters from the incessant battering, right? The Greeks are continually ramming the door from the outside, and so the door is kind of shaking, tottering on its hinges. Okay, and the next subject is postes, the doorposts, and then you have a PPP, a perfect passive participle, agreeing with them, which is emoti, having been removed from the hinge. So cardine is ablative case, meaning from the hinge. And then the verb that goes with postes is procumbunt, fall forward. So just to go back to this semicolon here, so the door totters from the incessant battering, and the doorposts, removed from the hinges, fall forward. So in other words, the Greeks are kind of battering at the door from the outside. The hinges kind of give up, basically. The doorposts become removed from the hinges, and the door, the doorpost just kind of collapse, right? The door is collapsing, basically. And then you have this short phrase at the beginning of line 494. The subject is via, so a way, literally a street, but I think in this context it means kind of a path, a way in. Fit, happens or arises or occurs. And then we again, that's the ablative of vis, meaning from force. So a way arises from force. In other words, the Greeks' force allows them to get in, basically. Then another semicolon, and the new subject is Danai, which is the Danaans or the Greeks. So the Greeks, and then agreeing with them is a PPP, perfect passive participle, immissi, which means having been sent in, or in this context, I would say having been let in, having been allowed in, essentially having made their way in. What do? They rumpunt, they burst an entrance, aditus. Grammatically, this is plural, but I would translate as singular. They burst an entrance, and they trucidant, they butcher or massacre or slaughter, and the object is primos, the foremost, the first ones. In other words, they butcher the first Trojans that they see on the other side of the doors. And they fill, complent, the loca, the places, late, widely, that's an adverb, widely, militer, with soldiers. So militer is the ablative of miles. Now here, grammatically it's singular, but I would translate it as plural. So remember, in Latin poetry, the boundary between singular and plural is very fluid. Poets often pick one or the other, not because of the meaning, but in order to fit the meter, the rhythm of the line. So if a plural makes more sense than a singular or vice versa, you can sort of change them around. So I would say, just going back to Rumpunt for a moment, I would say the Danäans, having been let in, burst an entrance and butcher the foremost and fill the places widely with soldiers. And even loci here, by the way, it's plural, but you might decide to translate it as singular, the place, if you think that makes more sense, which it might do. Okay, so these are the kind of decisions that translators have to make when they're producing a translation for Penguin or whatever. Going on to the next sentence then. So non sic, which means not thus, not in this way. I might even say not so furiously, even though there's no word for furiously. That's the comparison that Virgil is making here. Because we are going into a simile, which we'll talk more about in a minute, try and make sense of it. But let's just go through it first. So cum, when. Remember, cum plus ablative means with, but cum plus a verb means when or since. So in this instance, there's no ablative noun, so let's say when. And then the subject is spumeus amnis, a foaming river. Amnis is just another word for flumen or fluvius. So when a foaming river, and then you've got an ablative absolute. The noun is ageribus with its dams, and then ruptis is the PPP, perfect passive participle, having been burst. So when a foaming river with its dams having been burst, and the main verb is exiit, has gone out, or in this context of a river, I would actually say overflowed. And quer has awikit, has overwhelmed the and the object is oppositas moles, the opposing riverbanks, right? So in other words, the riverbanks that are sort of set against the river, that are trying to contain the river, right? It's overwhelmed the opposing riverbanks, gurgite, with its torrent. So gurgite is ablative singular. And then another main verb here, fertur, present passive of ferro, it is carried. In plus accusative, in arwa, into the fields. And then you've got a present participle, furens, which you can recognize from the ns at the end, raging. And then cumulo, in a mass. So that's an ablative singular noun. It's where we get words like accumulate from in English. So it is carried into the fields, raging in a mass. So one big mass of water. And quer, through all the fields, that's per omnis campos, right? Omnis in prose would be omnes, because this is per plus accusative. And then you've got the other accusative, campos, right? Through all the fields. And then another main verb, trahit, it drags. And the subject is still the river, right? It drags. And the object is armenta, herds. So this is a really, really strong river torrent because it's even pulling kind of cows and stuff along it. It drags herds, cum stabulis, along with stables, cum plus ablative. So again, this is a torrent so powerful that it can sweep animals and buildings along with it. So essentially, I think what Aeneas is saying here as the narrator / Virgil as the poet, I think what is being said here is that the onslaught, the charge of Pyrrhus and the other Greeks into the palace is so strong that it's even stronger than, a really powerful river torrent, a river that's, you imagine a really powerful river that has, it's burst its banks, it's sweeping along, it's carrying animals and buildings, and it's just a real, powerful, powerful flood. And Virgil is saying, or Aeneas is saying, that even that really strong river torrent is less than this onslaught of Greeks into Priam's palace. Okay, so I'm just going to go through that sentence again from the beginning of 496. So, not so furiously when a foaming river with its dams having been burst has overflowed and has overwhelmed the opposing riverbanks with its torrent, is it carried into the fields, raging in a mass, and through all the fields drags herds along with stables. Okay, then we go into the next sentence. Ipse vidi, I myself saw. Right, remember ipse means, himself, herself, itself, myself, whatever. It just goes with whoever is the subject of the verb. So vidi means I saw, so therefore ipse is I myself saw. And the object is Neoptolemus, which is simply another name for Pyrrhus. So I myself saw Neoptolemus. It's not quite clear how Aeneas could have seen this, right? Because Aeneas is up, kind of standing on the roof of the palace, while Neoptolemus / Pyrrhus is bursting in through the front door at the ground level. So it's not very clear how Aeneas could see this, but this is just to make the narrative a bit more vivid so we can sort of suspend our disbelief of it. I myself saw Neoptolemus, and then agreeing with Neoptolemus is this accusative present participle, furentem. You can tell it's a present participle from the letters nt in the middle. So I myself saw Neoptolemus raging, and then kaide means with slaughter. So it's ablative singular, raging with slaughter. And quer, he's going to tell us who else he saw. He saw the twin, Geminos, Atridas. Now remember, Atridai or Atridas, this is what's called a patronymic, right? It's where you refer to somebody as son of someone. So he says that he saw the two sons of Atreus, or both sons of Atreus, and this is a reference to the two brothers, Agamemnon and Menelaus. Remember, Agamemnon is the leader of the whole Greek expedition to Troy, king of Mycenae. Meanwhile, Menelaus is the king of Sparta, and he is the husband of Helen, so he's sort of involved in the very origin of the war, because Helen is stolen from him, and he is the one who then sort of says to his brother, will you help me to raise an army in Greece to go and get Helen back? Right, so Aeneas sees not only Neoptolemus, but also both of the sons of Atreus, Agamemnon and Menelaus. And where are they? They are in limine, in plus ablative, on the threshold. And then he tells us what else he saw, right? Vidi, I saw. One object is Hecubam. Hecuba, this is the queen, right? She is the wife of the old king Priam, and therefore also the mother of Hector. Okay, so I saw Hecuba, and quer her centum 100 nurus, daughters-in-law. Now this is slightly inaccurate, I suppose, or it's hard to find a good translation for this. Basically, the nurus include the 50 daughters of Priam and Hecuba and the wives of their 50 sons, right? So Priam and Hecuba have 50 sons and 50 daughters. If you add up the 50 daughters with the 50 sons' wives, then you get 100 women in total. So that's who we're referring to here. I saw Hecuba and her 100 daughters-in-law, and quer Priamum. Accusative case again. Per aras, amid the altars. Per plus accusative. It doesn't make much sense, I think, to say through the altars. So let's say among or amid the altars. And then Priam is described as foidantem. Now this is a present participle, and you can tell that from the nt in the middle. It's accusative singular, it's referring back to Priam. So I saw Priam amid the altars polluting, foidantem, with his blood, sanguine, ablative singular, with his blood, the fires. So ignis is the object of foidantem. It is accusative plural. It's that is ending in poetry, which is the equivalent of es in prose. So you can think of it as ignes. So polluting with his blood the fires, which, quos, he himself, ipse, had consecrated, sacraverat, pluperfect tense. Okay. So I'll just go back to weedy again in line 499. So I myself saw Neoptolemus raging with slaughter and both sons of Atreus on the threshold. I saw Hecuba and her 100 daughters-in-law, and Priam amid the altars, polluting with his blood the fires which he himself had consecrated. So the idea is that these altars have fires going, where you would burn incense and animal sacrifices and things. And these altars are being kind of polluted or stained or defiled with the king's blood. Okay, so this idea of religious pollution. Then we have a new sentence, and we can start with illi, meaning those. And then quinquaginta is the number 50, and thalami are bedrooms, right? So those 50 bedrooms. And illi kind of implies the famous ones, right? Those famous 50 bedrooms, which all the Trojans would have known about. These are the bedrooms which, there are 50 of them for the 50 sons, and this kind of ensures the future of Priam's line, right? His family. So those 50 bedrooms, tanta space, such a great hope of grandsons. So nepotum is genitive plural, of grandsons. In other words, the hope was that out of these bedrooms, Priam's sons would produce grandsons, future kings of Troy eventually, and princes of Troy. So those 50 bedrooms, such a great hope of grandsons. The postes, the doorposts, superbi, proud, with, and now we have an ablative phrase, barbarico auro, with foreign gold. Barbarico meaning foreign, auro meaning gold, and with spoils, spoliisque, so que meaning and then spoliis meaning with spoils. And then finally, we get the main verb, right? So the subject is the bedrooms, and indeed the postes, right? Both of these are the subjects. And the verb is procubuere, which is a poetic form of procubuerunt. So third person plural, perfect tense, and it means they fell. They fell low. So just to go back over that there from quinquaginta, right? It means those 50 bedrooms, such a great hope of grandsons, and the doorposts, proud with foreign gold and spoils, fell low. So, this whole building that was a hope for the future, right? A hope of, future princes and kings, the future of Priam's royal line, it all just falls. And of course, this doesn't happen at once, but Virgil is kind of depicting it or describing it as if, there's this one blow that brings down the whole palace. And then let's just finish off this sentence here. So Danai, the Danaans, or the Greeks, they are the subject. The verb is tenent, which means hold. In other words, they are in charge, they are in power. You might say they hold sway. qua, where, ignis, the fire, deficit, fails. So in other words, the whole palace is being kind of occupied and destroyed, either by fire, right? Either it's burning down, or wherever there isn't a fire, there are, enemy Greeks swarming around. So this shows us the totality of the destruction. The whole palace is being destroyed, either by fire or by the Greeks. So just to go back through that phrase there, so the Danaan hold sway where the fire fails.